Hello, everybody. Hello, Subsourian.
Hello, Jay.
It's the weekly mutation. We're back.
Spear of Your Doom, Orbital Strike, Temporal Field, and Purifier Beam.
I think this one will be a lot easier than last week.
This one sticks into my mind, semi-non sequitur, because they used to do little text blurbs for like every mutation, and they stopped doing that fairly recently. Or not recently, but like later on. And this one had, like, most of it was like, oh, stuff that could theoretically exist. And this one was, Amon built another arc ship. I'm like, oh god, we have to add this to the articles, but put like a subheading of like, this didn't actually happen, but it's there, and I hate them. No, that's why I remember this one. That nothing else. It's actually not a very hard one.
Yeah, this looks not too bad. Yeah, and for all you out there, co-op is not canon, so all those old blurbs, they were just for fun.
They're just for funsies. I do miss them though. I added a bit of like charm to it. I don't know. I was sad to see them go. CTG actually started making up a bunch and kept that going forever. I think he still does it. Well, there are no new ones anymore. So.
Now they cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. But cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna go Nova. I am not doing Abathur again. Thank God. I'm so happy to be off Abathur.
I think I would like to try to finish up Karax this week. Again, this one really doesn't strike me as being like crazy hard. I mean, it could be. It has the potential, but I think this will be okay. So
it's not, especially because I can't remember Temporal Field slow or stun. I think it was slow. I could be wrong.
One of them stuns and one of them slows. I think Time Warp slows. I think this one is the straight up freeze, but I'm not sure.
That's yeah. Oh,
we'll
I
see.
think you're right.
We'll see.
Yeah, I remember now. It's heroics are slowed and normal units are stunned.
Okay.
So Nova will be fine, I think. So before we get into the topic, I got to congratulate our Jeopardy champion.
That's right. Yeah, I'd prefer, rather than calling me Jay Barino or Jay, if you could just call me Jeopardy Grandmaster, I'd appreciate it.
Jeopardy, yeah. Grandmaster, knower of all things UED.
When I nailed the UED topic, I knew that I would make you and Necron so proud.
Yeah, that was an interesting little thing. I mean, I know it had some tech problems, but some of those questions, like the stuff on mule stats, I would not have gotten those.
Yeah, so I looked up the one for the gold harvesting and the time that they lasted, and I was shocked to see that there was an entire... Okay, first off, for context, if anyone didn't see, I played StarCraft Jeopardy on Giant Grant Games' Twitch channel, and I won against someone else who is known for being pretty knowledgeable about StarCraft, so I was happy about that. Yeah, so one of the topics was mule facts. I was shocked to see there was a whole column of just mule facts. So that one, I think, threw a lot of us for a loop. And like I thought, I'm like, oh, I know what mule stands for. And then the question came up. I'm like, I don't know what mule stands for.
The one that always throws me off is the U, because utility just... I remember lunar because that's just the weirdest. Yes. Why is it lunar? It's the case of they made the abbreviation that had to come up with the name. In which case, I congratulate them because that's the most accurate way government makes abbreviations.
But yeah, and then there was a speedrunning column, which I think I got 2 wrong. Like I answered first, but got 2 wrong, but then there was UED, which I nailed, and then the portraits. I just totally blanked on Kaczynski's first name.
Milo Kaczynski. Yeah. Being fair, I actually had to look it up because you answered Tom. I'm like, oh wow, that is like Tom, and that's the Wraith pilot.
But that's Tom Kaczynski, yeah.
Kaczynski, but it is virtually the same name. It's like spelled slightly different. I had never noticed that.
That's why I got tripped up on it, and then my brain just went to the first thing that it thought of, which was Tom.
I remember, that one only sticks in my brain because they made a huge deal about him and his brother and like some of that side stuff, like the entire lore of the Widow Mine. But anyway. That was an exciting thing. Grant, you should do it again. I encourage any game show like that. Yeah,
that was fun. He had like a little macro PowerPoint that functioned as the board. It worked really well.
Yeah. How did the chiming in work with that? I heard people talking about it. I didn't know like how you all were doing that because I saw you had some issues.
So we were just in a private Discord message, and the first person to send like a ping in there. So I would just have like an apostrophe, and then whoever hit enter first, basically.
Interesting.
And people were saying like, oh, well, that has to do with like Discord randomly displays message order, which I don't think is true. I mean, we're talking about milliseconds here, right? And it's just, I don't know. Obviously, it comes down to like lag with like when we see Grant. He would put in a response that was like, enter your answer here. And then as long as you entered something below that, because there were some times where I would answer like slightly above where he would put that, because I was just really quick on the take, because I was trying to like preempt when he would put it in there so that I could answer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then people were saying like, oh, well, it's just random luck, but like everything that I saw aligned with, who he thought he saw coming up first, so I don't think it was like people were seeing different orders or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know
yeah,
in real Jeopardy, there's as much speed.
Yeah, exactly. It was much more speed than anything, and I think when people are talking about, or when you think about like data center lag, again, we're talking about like milliseconds, which is probably a lot shorter of a time relative to our answers. Even though like to the naked eye, we were all putting in like a buzz, and it was very, very close together. But again, we're talking like milliseconds if we're going to talk about like, oh, Discord lag and all this stuff. Like, it's not really. I don't think that's legitimately how it. I don't think that actually came into play. But that's easy for me to say because I was the winner. So.
Yep, undisputed champion.
Exactly.
No, but that's cool. I am very proud.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope he does it again, and you'll one day after enough happens, I'm sure you can go on, and then you can be the undisputed champ.
I'm deeply afraid because now they're like people are like, oh, you should come on. There's expectation. Like if there's like 3 speedrunning categories, I'm I know next to nothing.
Yeah. Well, and that was cool to me was that he like picked some topics that weren't like very typical StarCraft stuff.
Yeah. And applicable to him, that was the nice thing. Because, I mean, it is, like, it's his channel, and there's a wide variety of things he does with, like, speedrunning, campaign, ties into the story, all that.
Yep, exactly.
But I believe with the topic to completely non sequitur into it, we wanted to discuss a new Mass Effect trailer came out. Oh, careful, your bro's about to get vaporized.
Probe, no!
Oh, no.
It's alright, I'll come back. But yeah, so I had prompted for this week, we wanted to this is an easy mutation as well. We wanted to talk a little bit about the potential new Mass Effect game, as well as the remaster, as well as, I guess, just talking about the games that we played, because I think you and I both really enjoy them, and it seems to me like a lot of folks, in my community at least, seem equally intrigued about Mass Effect, because it is, another... Gosh darn it. It is another, space opera, space fantasy game.
Yeah,
so I think
a little harder sci-fi, which is I like. But
yeah, that's a good point.
I've always enjoyed it. So my history with the game series actually was I played the first one on Xbox and I hated it, partially because of the console controls, and I couldn't get far in it, and I had to come back in PC, and then I finally played through. It's like, oh, I actually kind of like this. This is pretty good.
Yeah.
So one thing on my wish list, because they've announced a new game and a remaster, and one thing on my wish list is please fix some of the inventory management from 1. I would love 1 if not for that.
I think a lot of people wouldn't have it any other way. I think the community split pretty hard after Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 2 was critically acclaimed, and I think was part of the reason why 2012 was one of the best years in gaming. Mass Effect 2 contributed to that among many other titles, but... oh,
it's my favorite of them, yeah.
Yeah, so... what upgrades am I getting? There we go.
The enemy is attempting to
but yeah, I agree, and I think I'm in the camp of I think 2 and 3 are definitely very different than the first one. The first one was much more typical.
Oh, I moved out of my suit. Trying to sabotage her. No, don't go out of the way. That's mean.
It's much more typical BioWare RPG. It was the first one was kind of the end of its era
Yeah, it definitely was like coming out of that Jade Empire KOTOR era. Wasn't it originally supposed to be a KOTOR 3, if I remember correctly? I could be off base on that.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know enough about that, but I would. That's likely the case. I'm glad that it turned out the way it did. But again, yeah, the first one had a lot of flaws. It was very buggy in certain instances too. But it was one of the first games that like really heavily incorporated player choice. Like again, it kind of built off of KOTOR, which is sort of the predecessor of the style of game.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, like the combat was okay. I felt like the higher difficulties were not really balanced at all, and I found it very, very frustrating.
I had friends who swore that there was like every game for the hardest difficulty, there was only one class you could really play. It changed depending on the game.
Yeah.
Oh. Don't hit my stuff, Amon. Jeez, that's a lot of bombardments.
So I'm just building up my ability to get more units now.
I'll just throw down an SCV over there.
But I think, you know, the controversial opinions always are now revolving around Mass Effect 3. And, which is a shame, because, like, I don't know, I guess this is controversial to some people, but, like, I think Mass Effect 3 was an excellent game. And I feel like the real controversial part about it was just the very end. And I think I agree, you know, Priority Earth probably needed cleaned up.
Yeah. So
if Priority Earth was fleshed out more and like actually gave, you know, the Paragon and Renegade players, you know, some more cinematic flavor stuff that aligned with their choices, then they probably would have been more satisfied. That's just my thought.
I definitely agree, and that was the big thing. I know a lot of people complained about from the beginning. There was kind of the editor, or like not editor, like developer promise of by the end of this trilogy, your choices are definitely like all the choices you make are going to impact how things play out. So a lot of people
they do,
but I
they
think
do through the whole game, not the very end. I think is probably where the misunderstanding was.
Yeah, and and there's also an element of like a lot of the people who promised that were not the same people who finished up the game, basically.
True.
That Mass Effect lasted a while, so. Oh, am I over there? No, not over there. I'm over SCV. The only annoying part is really running from these purifier beams.
Yeah. So I guess I guess it's my fault. We're just sort of like jumping straight into, again, like the more controversial part of things, which is the end of 3. I don't know. Even know if I would say it's controversial, but it's the most well-known part of the whole series, I think.
Yes. So I actually went in after all the DLC was added, and I only knew that there was people hated it, and I didn't even know they had added a 4th option. So I went in and accidentally got the secret shoot the kid option without knowing that they had added.
Oh, and then everybody dies. Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone dies. Oops. Yeah, I try to go through once blind and then go through again, or did a second one with
Area secure.
choices I actually knew the outcome of.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive drone
But 3's, I liked a lot of 3's DLC. I thought that was a strong suit. Mass Effect in general had some of the more memorable DLCs.
I felt the combat in 3 was definitely the most crisp as well, without a doubt.
Now, and I know a controversial part was the shift from FPS, like basically RPG to FPS.
No, I know what you mean though, but that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying like it was the shift from like more OG BioWare games into more action RPG.
Yeah, and some of it, like, I think one's combat wasn't much to write home about, but I admit I do miss some of the more exploratory RPG stuff. I even like the Mako section. I guess that would be my controversial opinion. I liked the Mako.
You know, I liked the idea of the Mako, and I liked many instances of it. I think the problem was that in practice there were many times where the planets felt like they were more randomly generated, and it resulted in there not really being, you know, reasonable paths the player could take to get to the different things, and you would just be diagonally going up hills and stuff, like huge cliffs and stuff, and it was more tedious. But ultimately I liked the concept, and I wish that maybe there was just a little more care put into it.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think that's one thing I'm just guessing, I have no evidence whether they've tried with 2 was to make it a little more focused, like the world's more lived in, but less of them. Kind of what I think they did.
I agree, yeah. So 2 had more discrete missions. You could still play them in virtually any order except the main plot stuff. But again, the difference was it wasn't as exploratory, but there were way more, like, meticulous missions, which I liked quite a bit. So, like, 2... It's weird because, like, 1 felt weird to me, but at the same time, when I was done with it, going from 1 to 2, I didn't really like it. I actually put 2 down after I played it for a little bit because I was like, this is strange.
I have a friend who, because the first, like, they came out loving the characters of 1, and because 2 arguably introduces, at least at the start, the 2 least interesting characters, he put it down.
Yes.
Like, I hate it.
That's absolutely true. Your guy died on the upper right one.
Dang it. I'll be over. Let me just get this attack wave. Actually, hold on. Waste some minerals to do this. But I got a ton right now.
Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna go down.
But the funny thing on that topic is I also, having said it, starting with the 2 weakest characters, 2 I think has by far the best cast of any of them.
Absolutely. Well, that was the strong suit of 2. I mean, when you think about it, like, what was the main story of 2? Like, I know what the answer is, but I think it's a rhetorical question in the sense that, like, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
2 is all about building your squad and getting close to your squad, and then the suicide mission at the end having, like, real stakes.
Well, the loyalty, I love the loyalty mechanic in terms of I love interweaving narrative and gameplay in that way, where your attachment to and what you learn about your companions will impact whether they're like survive and are good at their job, basically.
Yeah.
I'm a big on that in any game, really. I wish more would, and games have tried, but I think 2 hit a good sweet spot with it. And it can only really work if you planned out from the beginning that these characters are going to carry over, and if they die, they die.
I think between 1 and 2 they didn't really think about that, but between when they made 2, they definitely thought about it. Is my thought.
That's probably the case. I'm pretty sure they planned out that it would be a trilogy from the beginning, but I'm not sure if they... Because you can only really, like... I'm trying to think what the places you can lose. I think it's Kaden and Ashley are the only major choice.
Yeah, you have to
lose
pick...
Rex.
You can kill Rex, too.
Why you would ever do that, I don't know, because Rex is the best character.
Well, I mean, in some cases you didn't have a choice.
Yeah, I think if you lined it up a certain way.
If your Paragon and Renegade weren't high enough, then you couldn't convince him, and he would just be killed. And I think that's why a lot of people liked it, though, is because there were legitimate ways that the world just it didn't like screw you, but like it felt like you had a direct impact, even though like who in their right mind wouldn't have had Paragon and Renegade high at that point. But that's not really, I think, what matters. The point is that like it felt like because of your good work, you would save team members, etc., etc. And if you didn't, it was almost like by pure accident, as opposed to like you playing poorly.
Yeah, I will say now I realize I do have a hot take. I am happy we moved away from the Paragon Renegade system. I noticed this in 2, particularly the Legion choice, where it was both choices had merit basically, but it came down to one is the good boy points and one is the bad boy points, and it's like, well, now you just ruined the ambiguity of this.
Right. That's a good point. And 3, I think, changed it so it was just like reputation, and then it just raised both, depending on which one you wanted to pick. And I agree, because it was sort of like Paragon, especially in 1, and sort of in 2, but especially in 1, Paragon was like more nice. Like it was nice, like you wanted to be unifying, but like you acquiesced to everything.
Yeah.
And then Renegade is like, well, I don't want to just like roll over. But instead, in 1, again, it's just like, I'm going to kill everybody. And I'm super racist.
It's the Fable moral choice. And they got better with it later. I never picked any Renegade in 1, but 2, I actually picked a few. Headbutting the Krogan is the best choice in the game.
Oh, yeah. I think the interrupts that they added in were good because you had to make a quick decision on if you wanted to do something or not. And then you would constantly be questioning, like, well, I'm a Paragon player, but... if I didn't Renegade interrupt there, or maybe if I would have Renegade interrupted there, what would have changed? And I think that was a cool thing for them to add. I mean, it's a QuickTime event, but like it actually you had the option on whether you wanted to do it or not, which could have resulted in something different, and I like that a lot.
You had to think and think fast. That's what I appreciated.
Yes.
Though I will say some of them I wish they told you what you actually were going to do before you clicked them.
I think that's the point, though. I think that's why. I mean, I agree with you. Like, I think that's why it works, though, is because it makes the player wish they could know, but you don't. And I think that's why the mechanic is as good as it is.
Yeah, and I agree to an extent, but there's a few where it's like, I don't know if you're going to tell him off or punch him in the face. It's like,
yeah, yeah. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier, though. Is like sometimes it was the same with the dialogue choices, though. Like the little blurb that you got on the dialogue wheel didn't really even align. Like you'd say, like "I hate you" in the dialogue wheel, and you would but like you'd click it and then you'd just like kill them or something. It was just like way more than what you thought you were picking.
I genuinely don't understand. I don't know if you played the new Deus Ex games, but they have a social combat thing, and it's very important you know what you're going to say. So whenever you scroll over it, it'll give the whole sentence you're going to say at the bottom of the screen. And I'm like, why isn't every game do this? I don't feel like it'd be that hard.
I think a cool option that they could have added is allow you, specifically for a first playthrough, to randomize how they showed up on the dialogue wheel.
Oh, I would love that, yeah.
Me too.
Bottom choice is always like Dick Shepherd, and then top choice is like, and then there's a neutral, boring choice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think if they gave you the option to randomize it, I wouldn't want it to be something that wasn't an option though, because like obviously when you replay it, you just want to spam your way through a specific one.
Yeah.
But I think that would be really cool if you could just allow it to be switched all around.
And I think that it looks like the new one, like going back to the announcement, the new one is super early in development, so maybe they'll listen to some feedback on that. Though BioWare's in some interesting troubles right now, so we'll see how it turns out in terms of its structure.
Yeah, so that was my opinion on the new teaser. So if you haven't seen the new teaser, I guess turn this off if you're like, oh, I don't want a minute-long teaser spoiled. But Liara's at the end, and they're like picking up the N7 armor, implying that they're like looking for Shepard. The mass relays are also destroyed.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's the biggest point of it, is the mass relays being destroyed. Of like,
yes.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. So there's two elements to it. Number one that we should talk about just after this is, what does the teaser, I guess, imply? And then number two, I guess the thing I would start with is, I feel like this is like an Elder Scrolls 6 situation where BioWare's like, things aren't looking good for us. Put out a teaser for a game that's not even in pre-development, and they'll just clap like fucking monkeys because it's Liara.
They already did that. It was called the new Dragon Age, which they also showed a very trailer didn't show anything for.
So yeah, my concern is it's gonna be Elder Scrolls 6 Metroid Prime 4 syndrome. It's not gonna be out for years and years, and we probably won't get any new news for it for a long time. And the other concerning thing is Casey Hudson came back to BioWare and then promptly left, and he was like the lead creative director of the original trilogy. And again, I know people hate the ending and felt betrayed by it, but like for the most part, Casey Hudson gave people what they wanted again until that very end. So like it's weird, I think, to see him leave, because I feel like that's maybe reflective of where Mass Effect was going, and he didn't like it and he left. But it could be a number of reasons.
I'm honestly just, I don't know if you haven't read the I know you have, but if you haven't read the article on the like postmortem of Anthem, that's a very good read, and I fully expected some kind of that situation where there's a lot of meddling in different directions that the project's being pulled in, just based on prior history. But we'll have to see. I'm hoping it's good. I really hope I want it to be good. I don't want this to fail.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I didn't play Andromeda, first of all.
Yeah, I didn't either. My friend actually said it was better than people were giving it hate for in terms of its gameplay, but it's also very buggy and the animations are really bad.
I think it was heavily improved sometime after release, which is a consistent problem we're seeing across the industry, and it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I never played Andromeda, but I love the trilogy. It sounds like we're both on the same page there. So I completely agree. I think it's okay to get excited for things. I hope it's good, and I feel like it's very easy to get let down. So again, we'll keep our eyes open. But I'm also concerned that we're not going to see anything about this for like a full year at least.
Oh, I think, see anything about it, we'll probably see something in a year. I think we're not going to see this for a very long time.
Yeah.
Especially if, like with Casey Hudson leaving, it's probably going to be some internal shift. I mean, how long did Anthem take? That was a while, wasn't
Oh
it?
gosh, yeah. And then I don't want to say it bombed, but again, there's the fact that there were like these lengthy postmortems written is clearly shows that there were lots of problems.
It definitely, like, the fact they kept having to redo their roadmap to give less and less. It's kind of good indication it bombed probably. Oh,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. I could be, launch sales might have been good. So going back to your point on the Metroid Prime 4 like Elder Scrolls thing. On one hand, yeah, I definitely agree. It's like it's dumb to see just an image, but I think back to Diablo Immortal and how if Blizzard had just put up a title saying we're working on Diablo 4, pretty much nothing, like there would not have been half the backlash.
I agree. I think so the issue I see with it is it's just like you're like tricking the rubes, the masses, which is, again, it's very elitist and patronizing of me to say. So, like, I don't think it's right in either case. I look at Blizzard and say, like, yeah, they could have put up just a Diablo 4 image and people would have clapped and been like, oh my god, even though there was literally no information given. It was just something for, like, public image. So, like, I acknowledge that that's what they should have done, but I don't think it is right to do. I don't think that's, like, the ethical thing that they should be doing to market the game.
I guess it depends. Coming from if I got an image that said we're working on StarCraft right now, I clap like a monkey because there's no, like, and for the Diablo community too. There's nothing to look forward to.
Right.
So getting something like that does reinvigorate interest in the company and interest in seeing how the project goes.
That's true. Yeah.
Then it comes the issue, especially with Blizzard, of a lot of games just don't see the light of day. So what happens if you announce this and then you got to scrap the project?
And arguably, this was, I think, one of the core prime issues with why Reforged continues to be a massive flop because they couldn't finish it and they released too much information too early and put a release date on it, and it totally fucked the whole game.
Yep. And this is my own theory, and I don't have anything to back it up. I kind of have the feeling that because they announced Metroid Prime 4 is the only reason they didn't cancel it, because they realized that this, like, with a Japanese studio, it's probably not going to be great. We should get Retro to do it, and they're now apparently redoing the entire game. So I have a feeling if they hadn't made that commitment, that we probably wouldn't see the game.
Yep, and Retro only just recently, like within the last 2 months, hired a production director for the game. So, again, and that was announced 3+ years ago at this point.
Yep.
So, it's a cautionary tale where that's why I say, like, just showing a logo, while it does seem like it's the best move to, like, keep your community interested, it's still misleading in the sense that you're getting people interested for literally nothing. So I think that's my issue with it, is, like, it is good, like, as a fan, I want to be interested, but at the same time, again, I see this Mass Effect teaser, and, like, I'm excited for a brief moment in time, and then it's going to disappear for years.
Yeah. I guess it's given... I don't mind it as much, just because it gives you something to, like, hope for. And I say that as someone who's very committed to it. But I definitely do agree that it's... I wouldn't call it necessarily, like, baiting, but... like, if the direction of the game changes... It also, like, shoehorns you in a bit with development. Because if you want to try something new and, like, out there and wild, like even Andromeda, like, what do you do? People are going to get ideas in their minds of, like, it's going to be another thing of what's before. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I think the difference too, at least with both the Dragon Age and the Mass Effect trailers, the teasers, is, like, it actually gives you I don't want to say a clear indication, but for, like, a first teaser, it does give you a very specific indication on what's going on, which I think is good. So I guess that's, rewinding to that initial point is, like, what was actually in the teaser and what is implied from it. Do you want to maybe go through that?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's there's only really 2 points, is that Liara is surviving looking for Shepard, which we kind of knew, like, I think it's the 100% ending. I can't. Basically, there's an ending in 3 where you get the impression Shepard survived.
It's only the Renegade Destroy ending.
Is it only the Renegade Destroy ending?
It's only the Destroy ending, and you have to have a shit ton of war assets. So, like, you have to be more completionist, and only the Destroy ending, which aligns with the other point from the trailer.
Oh, okay. That I didn't know. I just assumed, like, I guess they're just going with the Destroy ending, which, I mean, it makes the most sense from a sequel standpoint. The other 2, or other 3, I guess, are a little harder to do. I don't think they were going to do the everyone dies ending, unfortunately.
Yeah, so the teaser starts and the mass relays are destroyed, like completely destroyed, which is something that only happens if you there. So there are 3 endings to Mass Effect 3. One is like the Renegade option, one is the Paragon option, in theory, and then one is like they call it Synthesis, which is I think it was supposed to be like the you did really well, so of course you'd choose this one. That's not how people saw it. That's not how I saw it, but I think that was the intention. Even though it didn't really come through to me, and that one was Synthesis. And like you said, so the Paragon option was Shepard becomes the hive mind that controls the Reapers and uses them to help, like, run the galaxy. And everyone lives in peace. And then Synthesis is, like, organics and machines literally fuse together, and everybody lives in peace and harmony because organics and synthetics, like, understand each other at a fundamental level, etc., etc. And then Destroy is Shepard just says, fuck this. This is supposedly the Renegade ending. I'm just going to destroy everything. I don't care what the context is. I think I'm being tricked. Just destroy them at the cost of all other AI, which you have, at that point in the game, you likely had several on your team as allies or on your specific squad. So you had to, like, make that decision. And then, of course, you could just refuse, and then the Reapers kill everyone. Yep. And so the teaser shows the mass relays destroyed, which is the Destroy ending exclusively, and that... Again, it's only implied Shepard is alive if you choose Destroy. So people didn't like the fact that there were only 3 choices. They wanted, like, all their decisions to matter somehow, which I feel like is sort of impossible.
I think it'd be possible if it's harder from the tighter narrative they were trying to tell. Had they done, and they'd probably run into some. I don't know if you played Alpha Protocol. It's a game I feel like did choice that they wanted, that, like, to that extent, and if you just played it through once, it was a complete incomprehensible mess. So I think people kind of wanted that, and it'd be very hard to. I think if we actually got what they wanted, it would be a very much weaker story. Granted, I don't agree with a lot of the weird. I don't like the kid beats. I know I'm with a lot of people on that. Yeah. The weird kid driving narrative. But I feel like there wouldn't have been as many, like, tight God, I'm blanking on the names of the planets. The Krogan homeworld arc I thought was fantastically done, and still managed to work in your choices, whether you let Mord live or die. But yeah, the interesting thing of the ending that's gotten pointed out over the years is how it basically, and I think it's why people, like, also look down on it, is it apes Deus Ex. I don't know if you played the first Deus Ex, but it basically is the same endings but with less context leading up to it. Where it's like destroy, become one with the AI, or, like, let the AI and humans live together as one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and to be clear, I didn't like the ending either. My view on it is, like, play everything in the game up till Priority Earth, play the DLC Citadel, and then just close the game and imagine, just make up, like, pretend what you want the ending to be, and that's the ending, right? Just don't even bother. Like, Priority Earth, I feel like, as a whole, was a very bad way to end it. I just want to be very clear, I agree. And I think the run towards the conduit and that whole section, like, walking through the Citadel wounded, that all felt very idiosyncratic to me. It was very weird, and it had, like, a totally different vibe to it, where I understand why people were like, this is wrong. Like, it just felt weird and wrong, and it felt like you were, like, in a dream sequence. So then, of course, you started getting these, like, indoctrination theories popping up, which was cool, even though BioWare explicitly said that's not the case. That was all cool, but that whole end sequence did just feel off, I think.
You know, I genuinely, and I'm definitely going to be wrong, I have a feeling we're going to see elements of the indoctrination theory incorporated into this new one, just because of how widespread and, like, I wouldn't say fixes the plot, but, like, fans really latched onto a lot of it. And a lot of it, I think, does lead to some interesting ideas, like the hallucinations and the dreams and the whatnot. But I don't know. We'll have to see the direction they go, because I don't think they plan for a 4th chapter. So it's uncharted waters.
Exactly. I think it's interesting, again, the fact that they would canonize one of the choices. Because, again, there were so many different opinions, like, it was a color, like, I had to pick one of 3 colors, how stupid. But now people are going to say, well, if you're going to canonize one of the choices, doesn't that nullify, all the players' choices as well? Even though the big backlash was, I didn't get to really choose my ending, or an ending that I liked in the first place. So I think that there's kind of a no-win situation by doing that.
The Wings of Liberty syndrome. Your choices don't matter because Metzen decided.
Yes. Yeah, it's like, we can pick Tosh or Nova, but actually it's Tosh.
I get it, and it's a hard thing to... So people want a big universe with, like, books and, like... they want to feel like it's part of a big cohesive story they can just keep digging into. But when you have choices that shape the universe, like what do you do in a book? Like, does the writer, you either avoid it and then make the decision not matter, or you dive in and canonize it? It's difficult because either just don't like capitalize on expanding the universe further, or
Yep.
I don't know what you do really.
I think, well, okay, so I agree with that, and just kind of rewinding to why I think Priority Earth wasn't the good ending there is, so I think if the Star Child ending with the 3 beams all stayed the same, one thing I think that would have actually maybe placated people to not being as upset about that was make all the lead up on Priority Earth actually make, like, satisfy the player, as opposed to being, like, entirely human-centric, and, like, that's where it felt like your choices should have been shown in a better way. And other than just, like, which characters survived. Like, give just, like, it didn't have to be long, but, like, little cutscenes of, like, what your choices have led to, like, Quarian's pinned down, fucking Geth Prime's dropping in, right, and, like, saving him. Like, you want to see that in, like, a brief cinematic, and you're like, I did that, right? I was able to, like, achieve peace. And, like, or if, like, you're Renegade, you, like, trick Krogan, you, like, tell them to go to a location where they get, like, mowed down in order to let, like, your human squad circumvent and, like, do something. You know what I mean? Like, there were things that I realized, like, the pre-rendered cinematic stuff was expensive and time-consuming, and they ran out of time. But I think, like, adding in a little flair like that to make Priority Earth more reflective of all your choices, I think would have maybe, again, I use the word placated the audience such that when they got to the 3 beam choice, it maybe wouldn't have felt like such a slap in the face.
I definitely agree with that. They did a tiny thing and it's the one thing I remember about the final act, really, was where before you go into the final battle, you can walk through and talk to every one of your former crewmates, including those that weren't in 3. Like,
yes.
you could, and I thought that, like, it gave it a sense of finality, the fact that you talk to everyone you've ever met across all 3 games. And I agree with you. I would have liked if your choice, it showed your choices more coming into that battle, because in the end that was what the war or the whatchamacallit,
the assets,
war assets, that's what it was you gathering everyone together. And it would have been nice to actually physically see, I mean, you kind of see it with the weapon, but, like, see everyone coming together, because that was the point of the game.
Exactly. Yep. Being able to see those assets in something that felt more personalized, I think, would have made a huge difference. And even just having it so, like, players could go online and be like, oh, I saw this, and this other person says, like, oh, well, I actually had, the Quarian in this, and, I had Geth, and, like, that kind of stuff would have made it feel a lot more personalized, such that, again, the whole Star Child thing maybe would have been more of, like, an afterthought, like an epilogue, as opposed to, like, the climactic end.
Changing gears, the ending was okay, and I saw it after it got quote-unquote fixed with more options. The one thing that I actually really disliked in 3 was Cerberus, and because I came out of 2, they went from being a ethically gray option to the enemies you mowed down, and I really liked how they presented them in 2, and I thought that and there's explanations for why they, like, Elusive Man slowly being indoctrinated and digging too deep, but I don't know, it took away a lot of the like the tough decisions you made in 2 surrounding them. Do I trust them? Do I not? And then in 3, the answer is, yeah, you shouldn't trust them.
It felt contrived just to have that as an enemy faction.
Also, where were all those guys in 2? Why didn't I have that army?
Yeah, right.
Like, I'm mowing them down. It's like, man, this would have been nice to have for the collector base.
and
yeah, oh, go ahead.
I think the fact that there's really nothing that you could do regarding Cerberus, I think, there were some war assets, I suppose, that you could collect and, like, have bolstered if, based on, like, how much of a relationship you have with, like, Jacob and stuff like that.
And there was the you can talk the Elusive Man into killing himself, which I thought was a cool touch, but I think they needed a few smaller touches like that. I think going back to the ending, I think that would have helped a lot, had there been more of, not even to the ending itself, but just leading up to it. Just tiny touches.
Exactly. I don't think it would have taken a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it kind of belied a trend that we're moving away from, I will admit, of, like, the final battle is very cinematic, but to be very cinematic, a lot of times it's got to be a static thing, and yeah, you don't want to keep remaking it for every iteration of the game. but I think people would have taken a kind of poor-looking finale that incorporated their choices versus what we got.
I think too they kind of fell into, I don't know if this is a trap or maybe it's just too myopic, where they thought like, oh well, we know the fans want X, therefore we can't give them X. We have to give them something that like they don't think they're not expecting, but like we think they'll like. Because I think I read a couple of interviews. I remember they're like, we're gonna just have it be an end boss battle with Harbinger. And you look back, you're like, why didn't you just do that? They're like, oh, we didn't want it to be a big boss battle. Like, but why not?
Yeah, that the Marauder Shields meme where
Yeah.
It's a trend you see in a lot of media. You can just give us you can have twists, but sometimes it's just comforting to get to the ending, and if it's well written, even if you saw it coming, especially if you had years to sit and think about it, because having something completely unexpected oftentimes is you feel cheated just going straight through.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would have loved the Harbinger fight, but.
Well, I think it also there were very mixed expectations going in that were suddenly shattered at the very end, which was, I can bring together all these things. The war assets seem like such a central pivotal thing, and you're just collecting things onto a list, but I like the little flavor text that they added with all of them. That was neat. Mm-hmm. And then people thought I'm gathering everyone. This is something that no previous cycle was able to do, and I'm going to be able to conventionally win somehow. And then at the very end, the thing is, it was never established earlier in the game, that is 100% not an option. And you get to the end, and then it's suddenly by the way, there's literally no way you could do things conventionally, so it really didn't matter how many people you gathered, so long as you could make it to this point with nothing, as long as you got here, it didn't matter how many people you brought together. In fact, by bringing them together, that just means more of them are dying at this moment, because they're all here.
Yeah, and I definitely, I think that was an expectation going in. But one thing I can get why they might have moved away from it, because otherwise any other option feels like a bad ending. And that was how some games have done it, where it's if you get all the 100% the game, you can get the real good ending where everyone lives. But then it's well, okay, every other option now feels like a direct game over. I don't know. I definitely agree that I wish the war assets did something, basically.
Yep. I guess they unlocked the synthesis ending.
Did they? I thought you always got it.
No, you needed to have a certain number of war assets to unlock synthesis. Oh. So that's why I say that I think the intention was supposed to feel like the superior option that you only unlocked by being slightly more thorough. You didn't have to be that thorough, but by being slightly more thorough. And therefore, as long as you could unlock synthesis, the other two would be no brainer. I'm not going to pick those because I have synthesis. I think that was the intention, but I don't think many players took it that way. I definitely didn't. I didn't even know that it was like that. Yeah.
But also I made sure to get all the war assets, even the ones locked in multiplayer, because apparently there were some, which I didn't. So admittedly, I wouldn't have tried it otherwise, and its multiplayer actually wasn't bad. I was kind of surprised
great.
by that.
Yeah, I thought it was
great. I was kind of shocked. And I don't usually like that kind of game, but it was I had fun the few games I played to get the 10 more assets I needed for it.
I'm excited to see if it gets reinvigorated with the remaster.
That'd be interesting, actually, come to think of it. If there was a cohesive, I remember that was always something I kind of hate, and not hate, but in a space MMO, I want to play different races, and and that let me do it. So if they expanded that, maybe added some stuff, I think it could be great. I would love to see that.
Mm-hmm. Well, so it was hidden, but there were things that were hidden behind shitty microtransactions for sure. But there was also a lot of content that came in as part of free DLC. They added a bunch of maps and characters and stuff again that were free. But then if you wanted to level up your weapons and level up your skills, it was locked behind loot crates, which were randomized. Yay. And you could buy more of them with real money, or you would just get currency by playing. But obviously, you'd get a lot more if you just paid.
My hope is the current gaming client, especially coming from EA, who's rather not in good terms with loot boxes right now, will hopefully see a move away from that.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, so I think they were probably really nervous about the multiplayer, and that's why they would try to be very explicit, nothing in multiplayer is required for the single player stuff. the galactic readiness rating was just like a percentage thing where like it would like sit at 50%, and as you played multiplayer you could get up to 100, but you didn't need to get it above 50% to get anything special at the end of the game. Contrary to what people might say online, I'm guaranteeing you did not have to play multiplayer for anything.
I don't even think it was that, because I thought it was like 2% that you can only get through multiplayer that you wouldn't otherwise. Because I remember I only played like 3 games.
So
and
there's
I got 100.
I actually know too much about this. So there's a war asset called N7 assets, and as you leveled up each individual character in multiplayer, once you got them above a certain level, they would like become N7, and it would give you like 10 points as a war asset. So you could get like an infinite amount of that by leveling up characters. It wouldn't be infinite, but like you could get 10 just for one character. Your second character's 20, etc., up to like 300 something, right? However many characters you leveled up past a certain level. But you didn't need any of that to hit any threshold to get like the quote best ending.
Okay. That would make sense. And yeah, I remember I got that best ending, and I only did a few games, so it's an interesting idea to tie it in, especially because like I mentioned, I like it when narrative and gameplay come together, so you're feeling like you're actually contributing through multiplayer. It's an idea, but I don't know. Either do it too little, which you could argue that they did, or you could do it too much and then everyone complains. So I guess they did the right choice. So.
I feel like if they remove the microtransactions from multiplayer, or like make them more palatable, like maybe just give players more rewards simply by playing. Like you can keep the microtransactions, but like give the player more points to spend simply by playing the game. I actually think that would have a really good chance with a remaster to be like get a pretty big community, because it was really popular when it launched.
I think so. Yeah. No. I'm curious if this is going to be, because I had heard things that they might change stuff, but that not, and I don't know if this is going to be like a remake or just get a nice coat of paint. I don't even know what I know what I want actually. I would like some gameplay improvements, but we'll see.
Well, I want the first game to stop letting me glitch into floors.
That would be nice, yes.
And I don't want I think the biotics in the first one need reworked to be less sloppy. Like getting hit with an enemy biotic and you just sort of like flop onto the floor for like 10 seconds. That needs to be adjusted. Like that was just weird. And then like you said, the inventory system.
Yes, God, the inventory.
Let me reduce more things to Omnigel than just one at a time.
Yes. Hey, the flopping animation was the best part of that game.
Yeah, and then you'd flop into the floor and glitch into the floor, and you had to load a save, and yeah.
No, and God, yeah, we'll see. I think hopefully the remaster will be relatively, I guess, soon. I don't expect it'll be for another 2 years or so, but it'll tide us over.
Yeah, the remaster is spring 2021.
I guess the real question is, will choices from, because then it just becomes a giant mess if you do this, but will your choices from the first 3 carry over to 4? Will that be a thing they do?
Oh gosh.
That's gonna be a gigantic disaster if they do that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think they might, but they'll probably do it very limited. Or they could even, I mean, it doesn't really fix the problem, but Dragon Age actually did a thing for 3 where you can go on a website and basically generate a save. You just go down a list of choices, and then you just go into this new game with the choices you want, which I thought was a really cool idea.
They had that for Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3. It was like it was like an interactive comic where you could. It was only like the major choices, and it was basically like, did Rex live or did Rex die?
Oh, okay, all right. I only remember it from Dragon Age 2 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
I liked Dragon Age is another one I'm excited for. I don't know how much you've played of it, but
that's one I've never actually dove into it, and I'm concerned. I feel like Dragon Age Origins would be too old for me to try. It'd be like trying Mass Effect 1 for the first time now. I don't think I'd be able to do it.
I would yes, it's a little better. I would say it's aged better than 1, but that's also as someone who initially put down 1 because of even its age at the time. So
okay.
Yeah, but yeah, you're definitely right though that there's a lot that has not aged well. But
and I think 2 wasn't received very well. What's your input on that?
So
okay.
I actually have a lot better opinion of it than most, but it's still a mess. Narrative, it has some really good characters, which are the strength of every BioWare game, but narratively, it's just a complete mess. They definitely try to take the lessons from Mass Effect of like, oh, we should have a Commander Shepard character, and that's the central pillar of like our story. Except the big Dragon Age was basically Dungeons and Dragons game. The whole point was you could make a race and like a subclass, and like all of that factored into how people interacted with you. But in Come 2, you were just Hawk, and you're a human. You're a male or a female, and that it narrowed the scope, and not in a good way.
Okay.
But 3 Inquisition, I actually really like. You could honestly just skip 2, and just play 3, and I think it'd be fine.
Does anything carry over from game to game?
Yes, things still carry over. It's not to the same extent as Mass Effect because it's not as cohesive of a story. You definitely still probably want a primer, but I think you could still play each game on its own and be fine. I could be completely wrong because it's hard to say when you're like tell someone who's not seen it whether they'd understand everything. Like when I tried to get my wife into StarCraft, I showed her the story so far, which I think it did an awful job of like, oh, it condensed too much stuff, and she's like, I don't understand a single thing that's going on here. I'm not playing it. So I'm a bad judge of that, but I think you can play Inquisition and be fine.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll have to give it a shot.
Yeah, I know there's some controversial opinions on it, but it's definitely better than 2. Origins, I think, is still the best, but also the gameplay's age of the worst. Much like 1 in terms of writing, or Mass Effect 1.
Gotcha. Okay, good to know. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Mass Effect remaster just to see what they do with 1, because like again, it's old, but I've played it enough where like it's near and dear to me, and I'm cool with it. But like playing other games from that era for the first time now is painful.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Unless you have the nostalgia and like the muscle memory for a lot of it. The interesting thing to me is always going to be the fact that, well, I'd argue, especially the gap between 1 and 2, it's virtually 2 different like genres almost. Like
yes.
one's a pure first-person shooter, one's a FPS RPG. So I'm curious, like, if they're going to change that. I hope they don't change it, but I know it's going to be very jarring for anyone new coming in expecting like a very cohesive trilogy, and the gameplay is just drastically shifting everywhere throughout.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I agree, and I don't think the audience for a remaster are like completely new players. It could be, but I don't think. I mean, their primary with all these remasters is like, look, all the people that like this game are in their 30s now, and they're gonna have money. Like, we're targeting an age group of people who have grown up, have jobs, and will buy this game. Like, it's the most sure thing. That's why we have so many remasters, and they're successful, because they know that the audience that they're going for are people that can afford to buy games if they want games. And then it's sort of like, well, and, it'll get a bunch of attention, so other people will buy it. If they play 1 and then 2 is weird for them because it's such a shift, who cares? They've already bought it. I think is probably the mindset that they have when doing this.
I think so, but on the other hand, there's also a case of people are going to see this new game, people are all excited about it when it comes to the new Mass Effect, and they're going to go, well, I didn't play the other ones, and I'll just pick up this remastered.
Right,
and and then we actually got a lot of that, at least, I don't know, I can't say the numbers, I just noticed in my friend group. I have a ton of friends who are really, really, really deep into WoW who had never played Warcraft 3. So then Reforged came out, I was like, oh, I'll pick this up. It'll be great, and then I can learn what came before. And they're like, why is this bad? But no, I honestly can't say whether it appeals to, like, how this is going to appeal, who they're going to try to appeal to. It's probably going to be to us, to be honest, but
yeah,
we'll see how many new people pick it up. Because I don't think, like, compared to, like, StarCraft Remastered or, like, anything Baldur's Gate Remastered, it's like, it's a relatively recent game in the scope of remasters, so it's
exactly,
not
like...
bad.
The first Mass Effect, I can see a remaster in the sense that, okay, make it, it'll all be 4K, etc., etc., it'll be nicely and polished. I doubt they're going to change much with the combat. They might fix some bugs that are, like, game-breaking, because the first one certainly had a lot of those, but I don't expect much is going to be changed. But then I think to Mass Effect 3, and I'm like, what? I mean, okay, sure, it's going to be in 4K now instead, but I don't see what they would do with that game any different.
Yeah, that's kind of, unless you can't change narrative beats, really. I mean, it's like a sore thumb. But yeah, I don't see what they could really do different. Unless, I mean, they could. I'm thinking like Halo's remaster did add stuff to like bridge the gap between the games. I don't know if they could even really particularly do that.
Yeah.
But
I sadly just sort of expect the bare minimum, and I'll just be pleasantly surprised if they add stuff in.
I'll just play it like a dating sim like I always do.
Yeah, I mean, I replay Mass Effects probably like once every 2 or 3 years, so when this comes out, it'll be perfect for when I get an itch to play it anyway, so I'll certainly get it and play it.
Yeah, definitely. I should actually replay it. I've been on a kick of games trying to replay some of or mostly go through the library of games I haven't played and beaten, but I feel like Mass Effect's due for another attempt at a playthrough.
You might as well wait. It's going to be in the next 6 months.
Oh, is it going to be did they announce it's going to be
Yeah, it said spring 2021.
Oh, I missed that part. Okay. Yeah, I was saying it'd be like, oh, this is going to be like a few years out, clearly. Huh. All right.
I really don't think, again, it's a remaster. I really don't think there's going to be like a shit ton of work going into it. I don't mean that necessarily in a disparaging way. It's just like, I don't think there's much they have to do to re-release it. It's more so that it's all in one place, everything's released with it, and it works on like modern equipment and can be run on a high resolution.
Yeah, you don't need to remake all the. Well, I guess you would have to remake a lot of them in one, because I don't think the one's assets are salvageable in terms of the art team.
Right.
I go with 3. Maybe they can remake 3. I don't know. We'll have to see how. It's all going to depend on the price point. I think once we know that, I think we're going to know the level of effort.
Sure.
We'll have to see.
Mm-hmm.
That was my thing with StarCraft Remastered. I have so many complaints about the way they remastered it, but it was $15, so my complaints only go so far. So I didn't care that much. But if it's like a $40, $60 release, that's not great. Then people are of course going to complain. Well,
StarCraft Remastered is a good example of, and this is to more of the layman player. Like, other than the visual updates, the game is the same. It's almost exactly the same. In fact, it is exactly the same. Yes. They added like a couple slides, right? But otherwise, it's a graphical
the comic
upgrade.
Slides, and then they forgot the entire Dark Origin arc, and I'm not bitter.
And if they, if they updated a bunch of stuff on the back end, that's very much more like niche impact, like much smaller impact.
Right.
So,
yeah, that had a different appeal in that it was definite. Like they weren't even particularly hiding the fact it was made for Korea. It was made to help give the Brood War scene in Korea some kind of like little tiny jolt.
Yeah.
And if people bought it for the campaign, yeah, sure, that's cool. But it was not made for that. That was not what they were trying to really do.
Yep.
So, woe is me.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's the burden of potential. And we'll always think like, they could have done so much more. And Warcraft 3 Reforged is even a worse situation because they sort of made it clear that they wanted to. At least with Remastered, they didn't really give you a sense that they were going to do anything. So there was just like instant disappointment, and then you could process it. Whereas Reforged, they really got your hopes up, and then everything was just destroyed.
Definitely, yeah. And I was like, there was some disappointment in that. And it's still like, I don't like, I complain a lot about it, but I don't feel like it's a bad purchase. The graphics look really good on Remastered, not Reforged as much. Though I honestly don't hate Reforged graphics on some of them. I think there's a tidal wave of hate when it comes to it, but a lot of it's deserved.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a weird one. Again, like, it's deserved, but at the same time, you got to be like, it's, there's a threshold where like I can't really go above in terms of like caring about, I'm disappointed and I can be outspoken about it, but I'm not like going and leaving 0 out of 10 reviews and stuff. Like, it deserves a bad review because they actively broke an existing game, but like, holy shit, people really need to get a life.
Well, and we've wrapped around this at several points, and it kind of ties into Mass Effect 3 kind of with gaming culture and a lot of echo chambers. There's a lot of that hate can get to an obscene level to the point where you're threatening lives and all that.
Yep, it's this is a topic for another day, but I think we are in pretty similar agreement. Like, I think there's a healthy level of engagement that you can have with media, and I think like the more in depth you get, and in a positive way, go crazy, do as much as you want, but like, as it's just the negativity that comes out of some of this stuff. It's just, I guess I just can't empathize with it, which is why I complain about it as much as I do, because like I just don't get it. I just can't imagine using my free time. I mean, I use my free time to play games like this, but I just can't imagine getting so upset. And like I've seen non-ironic comments of people like, Warcraft 3 was my childhood. Like, if you're literally saying, like, a game was your childhood, it's not saying, like, I always loved Warcraft 3, I was really invested in it, but saying, like, this was my childhood and Blizzard has retroactively ruined my life that's insane. And I'm not even strawmanning. I've seen that comment a lot. It's crazy.
So I definitely get the idea, like, I'm definitely a deeply obsessive fan, so I definitely get the idea of this is my childhood. Having said that, the idea that it can retroactively come back and taint it is like, really? You have those memories. You'll never, like, no matter how many times you replay it, you're never going to get that capture of your childhood. You'll always have that childhood.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yep.
You just gotta be healthy engagement, or healthily engage with the media you like.
Yep,
Listen to me, the man who complains that Kerrigan's Eye Crawler is wrong and remastered, which it is.
Yeah, but again, you're not melting down over it.
No. Well, it depends on who you ask, but no, I'm not. I still play it. I still enjoy it. I just make my complaints known.
I mean, maybe I guess I just maybe in a future week I'll be able to articulate this better. But like, and it's not just because we're friends, but like the way that you again engage with the community at large, and how you've attempted to engage with Blizzard, and how like you clearly have gripes and there have been inconsistencies, and that's a problem for you, is just from an external observer on like an entirely massively different scale, like a different tier of, again, just general engagement compared to people who almost just like flippantly are like, this is trash and everything is awful.
The best way I've noticed where you can engage, whether it's really healthy or not, is can I go into a conversation with this person and talk about it, and they aren't going to like flip out and make it a personal thing? Like, are they going to then get emotionally like damaged if we have a conversation? And I usually take that as the litmus test of whether this person is healthfully or unhealthfully like invested in this, to the point where it just becomes a like any attack on the view they're holding now is something that is going to cause them to come at you, basically.
True, yeah, and that's kind of it's like a more foundational argument about how people engage with others' opinions online, et cetera, which is a whole can of worms, but that's...
Right, yeah. But I think it ties deeply into the way people express these views.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and online forums are like the worst way, like the least conducive way to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, well, because there's no like cues, and you'll notice this too, especially when it gets, even with voice chat, when you realize there's another person on the end, the conversation entirely changes.
Oh yeah,
it's really easy to be mean behind an anonymous wall on Twitter. It's a lot harder when it's face to face or even voice to voice.
That's true. Yeah, voice. Yeah, that definitely adds so much more.
But yeah, that was, and I felt bad too. Of like, I definitely toned down a lot of my rhetoric when I actually met the devs and realized, oh, these are people. I should actually kind of be nice.
Well, I guess I never really heard your opinions prior to whenever that moment was. But again, I would never get the impression that.
It was never bad, but I definitely, the consideration then came up of when I would type stuff of like, some actual human beings reading this and put thought and effort into like the thing you're commenting on.
Sure.
So
yeah.
It's not, I wouldn't say I was bad before, but once you realize they are human, you can never like stop that consideration, basically. And I that's the hope with. It's a shame because not everyone can talk to the dev and kind of figure that out, but. And especially when a lot of corporations kind of prop up a face and it becomes a faceless, like, basically a lightning rod almost. But I don't know.
Yep. Well, this is all still, I mean, this all kind of ended up on topic because this was, the reaction to a lot of the things we're talking about also aligned with how people reacted when Mass Effect 3 ended.
I mean, it kind of was the first big one, I would say. Well, obviously there were outrages before that all over the place, but that's the one I remember as the big one.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's the first one that I remember thinking like, oh my god, like everybody hates this. Not everybody, but I remember there was like an online forum war about like defending it versus hating it, and then it evolved into like, oh, you're blind and defending this. Like it was the first one that like hit all the stereotypes of like, fanboys versus ardent brain dead haters, and then they would just accuse each other. Again, they made it personal about like, oh, you'll defend BioWare for anything. Like that was the first time I remember seeing a lot of those types of arguments.
Yeah, and then there's the people then there are those who actually will. But it's the tough thing of like everyone strawmans each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was the first argument over a game that I can remember with the strawmans coming out real strong.
I don't know if there was a much smaller version of it, but when StarCraft 2 first got announced and they announced it was going to be 3 campaigns instead of 1 in terms of like 3 expansions, there was a minor meltdown about that. And you can look back and still see some of the remnants of it if you look at old enough forums. It was interesting. I was actually looking at that recently, but
I was at that BlizzCon. It was 2008, and that was the only BlizzCon I ever went to, but that was when I was playing WoW, which is why I went, because I went with some guildies. And I remember being at that announcement, and they showed the Whispers of Oblivion or Whispers of Doom part of the trailer up until Kerrigan comes out, and everyone clapped and was excited. And then they said, like, oh, and it's going to be 3. Like, they showed the 3 box arts, and everybody clapped, but I remember, like, everyone was kind of looking around like, is this... Are we excited about this? Like, this just means that we're just going to be like longer until there's any sort of continuation of this.
Yeah, and apparently, like, people think it was for money, but Metzen came out later, even when he has no reason to like beat us off about it. Where it's like, yeah, we plot out a story, realized it was going to be 70 missions, and it was like, we can't do this in one.
Yeah,
like, and be reasonable about it.
Well, it gave them an opportunity to like revamp the PvP scene in really big ways as well.
Which is funny because that ended up being a kind of a detriment to him, apparently. Like Morton came out recently and talked about how basically there was an expectation of a new units added every expansion, but when Heart of the Swarm to Legacy of the Void, they were like, well, some races don't need new units, so what do? We sell on this point, but we can't like give Protoss no unit. So yeah.
So just give them a mothership core that everybody hates, and then eventually remove it many years later.
Yep. Protoss, that goes into a whole other thing on Protoss, which I feel like that's an argument for another day. Maybe we'll do a Frost Giant episode.
Yeah, we'll do maybe their topic next week or the week after.
Yeah, asymmetry. That one actually looks pretty interesting because I have thoughts, but I also know they're not controversial thoughts, so it's not. Yeah, it's not shockingly asymmetry in RTS is good, but
I think that's okay. I don't really think much of what we talked about today was very controversial. It's just engaging folks that are watching,
Yep. You should all replay Mass Effect and enjoy it.
It's a good one. Yeah, if you haven't played the Mass Effect trilogy, I would highly recommend picking it up. I'm not going to shill for a remaster that's not out yet, because Lord knows they could always retroactively ruin the game, because we've seen that happen before. But I will say, wait for the remaster. If it's got good reviews, then definitely pick it up and play it. And if it's got bad reviews, go and get the original trilogy and play it, because it's really good.
Buy it anyway, because if they get enough money, they might remaster KOTOR, and that's what I want.
Oh, God.
That really needs a remaster. I love that game, but God, that needs a remaster.
It's on mobile. You can play that game on your phone.
And it works really well on mobile, but there's still a lot of jank to it, and it's very deeply rooted jank.
That was kind of the charm to those old BioWare games.
Definitely. Jade Empire, too. I need to eventually beat that game. It's the one that no one remembers, but for some good reasons.
I remember the name, but yeah, I never played it.
The Kung Fu BioWare game. It's good. Hasn't aged quite as well, but...
Just the shrug, like, it was good.
It was good. I'm probably not going to go back to it, but...
Very nice. Well, hey, thanks everyone for joining us this week. I think it's time to round this up, but thanks for joining me this week, Subsourian, and we'll catch up next week.
All right, we played a mutation. I forgot.
Oh, yeah. It was done very quickly.
All right, see you all later.